When did you realize your partner wasn't the one? Story number 1. We were living together. Super poor. One of our favorite bands came to town, Big Sugar. We talked about it, but it wasn't in the budget. Friday night rolls around and he's getting dressed to go out with the guys. Where are you off to? Big Sugar. What? We talked about this and decided we couldn't afford to go. Oh, we can't. But I can. Reminds me of something my ex did. It was around Halloween time, my favorite holiday, and he told me he was meeting up with friends to watch some fights on TV. A few months later, he puts a group picture of him and his friends on the fridge of them all at the big haunted house here. I was perplexed as to when that happened, and he told me it had been on the night that he said he was watching the fight. I asked him, "Why didn't you tell me?" And he said, "Because I didn't want you to come." Then I asked, "Why would you hang a picture of that night on our fridge if you didn't want me to know?" And he said, "Well, it was months ago. It doesn't matter now." Different but same, my then husband knows I'm a huge sports fan, but specifically we are talking Die Hard for our minor league hockey team. I begged and begged him to go with me to a game because I wanted a date night and we usually do his stuff. Rarely anything for me. He declined. He isn't a sports person, said he was busy. His buddies called and he started walking out the door. I asked what's up. The guys are all going to the game. The game I wanted to go to, but you were too busy to go, and you don't even like sports? That game? Yeah, you can't go. Just us guys. I'll see you tomorrow. Wish I could say that ended the marriage, but that was absolutely the moment I realized how little I meant to him, especially when his best friend asked me during the game why I didn't come with him, and I was invited to go. He sounds like a narcissist. My sister's ex did the same thing. He was in a marching band and my sister had come along with him to help them out with stuff, like preparing, baking, cleaning, setting up for practice, and stuff like that. She wasn't a part of the band, but she wanted to help out. Then one day the whole group arranged a dinner and get-together to mark the finish of all the work that they had done. My sister's ex told her that she was not invited. It was just for members. But several people asked her later why she wasn't there. And when she said she thought it wasn't for her to join, they were shocked because of course she should have been there. She had helped them out so much. At different times he made t-shirts for an event and gave them out to everyone who was a part of it except my sister, even though she, again, had spent lots of time helping out and participating. He did, however, give a shirt to the neighbor's wife, who he referred to as his soulmate several times. Very different but similar experience. I worked full-time and he was unemployed, on the couch for 2 years. I did everything for him, pretty much raising him while I worked 60-hour weeks to maintain our household. He was a dick. In fact, the best part of him was his dick. Anyway, one time we went food shopping together, and when we came home and finished putting food away, I noticed he was getting ready to go out again. So I'm like, okay, we're gonna go out again? I asked him, where are we going? And his response was, we aren't going anywhere. I'm going out. My response was, okay. And that was that. I felt like a fool, and he spent the night out doing God knows who or God knows what. This wasn't the big moment I decided we weren't getting married or meant to be, but this was one of them. Just randomly popped back into my head after reading your comment. One of my final straws with my ex was when I was promoted and started making good money. I was in an excellent position for a new car. His car had been sitting for years with a boot because he ran from DUI charges, and now he was using it again. It was having issues. I was told he and his best friend discussed it, and since my car still worked, he'd be getting the new car. Boy, bye. To make this better, when I showed him the new car later, we went on a ride and he was acting so bitter and crappy and told me I don't care about him. I was like, you know what? You're right, and turned around to take him home. He begged me to stay. We were just hanging out, but I kicked him out of the car and watched him cry as I left, never seeing him again. Story 2. When I realized I was making excuses for his behavior instead of feeling proud to call him mine. I've honestly had that epiphany for a lot of friendships, that feeling in the pit of your stomach when you realize how many excuses you make for their crap, but then honestly ask yourself if you could see yourself, even on a terrible day, treating someone the way they treat you. I think especially the last part of your sentence, instead of feeling proud to call him mine, is one more person should acknowledge. I had 2 different girlfriends leave me after several years for the same reason, but without my failing being 2 different types. 1. Housework. I worked long hours and tried to do just as much work around the house as she did. I never wanted her to do anything for me or pick up after me. And I took care of myself just fine for years before that, but fundamentally we just had completely different standards for how things should be done. So that would mean that if I left one dish in the sink at night after a long day on a Friday, and planned on cleaning it tomorrow morning, it would already be cleaned and put away by 7 a.m. by someone who resents me because she had to be my mother, something I never asked for. 2. Career. Later on, I ditched that job with long hours. I chose a lower paying but still 100% financially self-sufficient path so that I could have more time for my passion, making free educational science content and volunteering at our science museums. I have a degree that could get me higher pay, and so she sees that as a lack of ambition. To me, it is ambition, just not career ambition. She wanted to travel out of the country multiple times per year, to have a very large house with no kids. We're in a major city, and her friends all could do that with dual-income, high-paying jobs, so to her, I was a bum. This is something that has led me to isolate more as I got older. I meet so many people who are absolutely miserable and hate their spouses. It's an absolute buzzkill, and I find it easier to just not be friends with them instead of having to deal with them getting drunk and going off about how much they hate their wife or their kids, etc. It's shocking how many people, 30 plus, who are married with kids seem to hate their life. Not just complain, as we all do, but crap like calling their wife demons, saying they wish their husband would die, etc. Zero pride or happiness when they talk about their life and families. You just made me realize that before we got married, I ended up several times in urgent care, the ER, and even had a colonoscopy. And he was always there, and I never questioned if he would. I never even stopped to think if he would be there to support me. It was always a given, no matter the day or hour of the day it was needed. Heck, most of the time he was the one pushing me to go instead of me sucking up whatever it was. And yes, he's a great guy. The first time I had my boyfriend meet my friend and her fiancé, I woke up the next morning and felt like I was forgetting something. It bothered me so much until my friend texted me telling me how much fun they had the night before. I realized I felt like I was forgetting something because my ex-husband always had to apologize to people the next day. The only thing I had to explain, not apologize for, was when he met my aunt at an event and had a PTSD episode because of the situation around us, and he stopped talking. When we met at her house, he was normal, and we had a blast. I am so proud to get to be his wife. Story 3. When she asks me to bring her home fries after work, so I stopped into McDonald's and got her 2 large fries. I came in with them. She proceeded to take the bag from me, open it up, pull out the fries, and throw them in the trash right in front of me. I was pretty shocked and asked what was wrong. I wanted frozen fries, then asked why I even came over. This caused me to think really hard about things in the past, and there were so many other incidents like this that I just brushed off. Then I realized no matter what I did, she would resent me and not be happy with me. Someone on another sub posted about how her heavily pregnant friend complained to her that she texted her husband at work, asking him to stop by a supermarket near his workplace to pick up something she was craving. The friend's husband replied with something like, "That's not gonna happen." OP mentioned it to her husband, who proceeded to go to the supermarket and get the item for her friend himself. The friend's husband was then mad because he felt that OP's husband was trying to make him look bad. Some people really luck out with their partners and others not so much. Another example of this was, "Can you stop by the grocery store and pick up cheese sticks on the way home?" I messaged her back a few minutes later asking what kind she wanted. She didn't reply. I asked the employee at the store and he pointed me towards the cheese strings. For those who don't know, they're these little sticks of cheese that you can pull strips off of and eat. They're really delicious. Since that was the only cheese stick I knew of and the grocery guy knew of, I got her the regular cheddar and marble cheese ones. When I got home, I showed them to her and she was extremely upset. What she wanted was those frozen ones that you put in the oven that are breaded, and you get as an appetizer at a restaurant. I had no idea. I offered to go back and get them for her at the store, as it was only 3 minutes away. She refused and said I ruined her dinner. She kept the cheese sticks I got her though, and like 30 were gone by the end of the week. It's amazing how things just click like that sometimes. The straw that broke the camel's back. When you're wearing rose-colored glasses, all the red flags just look like flags. Then everything that happened in the past looks different and your entire outlook changes. I was getting dumped by her. I knew it, and we were having the talk. I was trying to end things amicably. "Thank you for giving me a chance, I appreciate it, and I'm sorry it didn't work out, I didn't meet your expectations, blah blah blah." Then it was her turn. She told me, "I can tell you don't date a lot." You're not good at it. I've decided I'll let you continue to practice dating me. It was such a nasty thing to say. In her context, I'll let you continue to buy me and my kids sometimes dinner and plan evenings at the movies, parks, bowling, or whatever. And when I need to do chores like laundry, you can babysit my kids for me for free, on the pretext that I've planned a date for us. Just don't expect any romantic reciprocation from me because we're not dating. I'm gracing you with my presence. The time and money you're wasting on me, you owe me that, because I'm letting you maintain this facade of a relationship. She was shocked when I refused, so she tried, let's be friends. It was like I saw the Matrix. I knew exactly what the terms of a friendship would be. She was equally shocked when I firmly refused and walked her to the door. I guess in her defense, her breakup wasn't the crappiest thing she had done. So she probably had no particular reason to think that would be what pushes things past the point of no return. In hindsight, I lucked out. I'm sure she would have just not been a complete bitch and instead just said something somewhat nice in the breakup, such as, I think you're a great guy, our values just aren't aligned, let's still be friends. I probably would have kept justifying her behavior. Agreed, and I would probably still be babysitting her kids like she wanted, but she had to get that last unprovoked insult in. I will admit, I have been this person. I don't know if the situation is similar though, but for me the reasoning was I really loved that man. I would pay attention to him and knew a lot about him, his favorite foods, style, brands, things, etc. So if he asked for ice cream, I would already know what type, size, and flavor. He would never have to tell me what to get for his birthday, Christmas, etc. because I paid attention. But he didn't really look at me at all and made me feel invisible. So even if I told him what I liked multiple times, he would still forget. I would be asked what I wanted for my birthday and I could tell him the exact thing, brand/make, do the work of even finding a website where they sold it and where it was on sale so that he could save money. Yet, he would get me a completely other version of the exact thing I wanted. I would like to think that maybe he tried to get me a more expensive version of the thing, but I didn't check. The same could go for a lot of other things. It built up where I just felt more and more neglected and invisible. He called me a narcissist for this at the end, and I wondered if I really was this crazy to ask for consideration. However, he rarely ever went through this himself because I would pay attention. So I tested it, and started, for example, buying more groceries with the things that I liked rather than including his favorites, like he would do constantly. Eventually, it became I'm making him feel invisible, but with no self-awareness of himself. So, after many years of this, I would definitely have been this girl if I had a brand of fries I always ate, he knows I eat, and has always seen me eat. I had mentioned that I hate McDonald's fries for takeaway because they are soggy, especially when they get home, and I can only eat them at the location, which is true, I do feel that way. Yet, he comes back with them anyway. It could be the straw that broke my back, so I don't know, but he had the same mindset as you. Thought I was crazy, even though I communicated and spelled it out to him. Over time, I have just learned to let it go, forgive, and accept that we all have different standards and levels of which we show care and consideration, that it's not always easy to know, and that other people can be in their own thoughts. It's not something that used to bug me though, it was built over years. Now I'm with a dude who I don't even say anything to. He just observes, sees what I eat, even surprises me and puts it in the fridge for me despite not living together, knows all my favorites and tests new ones. If he hears I've had a long day, he'll put a hazelnut Starbucks coffee in my fridge for the morning because he already knows I make milky coffee at home and wants to give me a treat. So when I wake up in the morning, he's already left for work. I'll open the fridge to get milk and the coffee will be there. He doesn't even ask for acknowledgement, just does this silently. After years of neglect, I will admit I got so triggered that I cried over a tiny $3 Starbucks coffee. Story 4. I went for a minor medical procedure and my gut told me that listing him as my emergency contact wasn't the right choice. Yes, that's a very clear sign. If you can't trust them when you're sick or in crisis, you need someone else for support. As a counter to this, I knew my husband was the one when I donated bone marrow and had a horrific recovery process. He was there through the procedure and took care of me when I was too anemic and sick to function. He was a rock for me and I knew that he would be an excellent partner long term. I broke my ankle and he was angry he had to take me to the hospital. Then after the first appointment I had to go by myself, by a train and a taxi on frickin' crutches. It told me he doesn't love me if I'm worth that much. It was a similar experience for me with my ex. I realized at some point, although I loved her dearly and she claimed to love me back, she was nearly completely and utterly useless as an adult, despite being in her mid-20s and a year older than me. She wouldn't drive. She basically refused to socialize with her friends or mine, would not take any sort of responsibilities without immense complaining, and when she eventually did start working, she was looking for every excuse to call out of work or leave the job entirely. I was thinking to myself, what would happen if we were driving somewhere and something happened to me? Or what would happen if I'm unable to work? There were a lot of other reasons why it didn't work out, but that was a big one. God, I couldn't imagine having a partner like that. I was in a nasty car wreck at the beginning of the year, and my wife stayed by my side in the hospital the whole night, fed me my dinner, one hand was mangled, the other arm had an IV line and monitors all over, and sat up in the OR waiting room the next morning while I was in for surgery. She also took on all of the domestic labor burdens until I had recovered enough to pick up my own slack again. I already knew she was the one, clearly, but I have a whole new level of respect for this woman now. Similar, but I was already married, and I was in the hospital giving birth to our second child. My husband and I had been going back and forth between two names, and he was leaning towards one because the other one was the same name as his brother, and he found that strange. Something told me that his brother wouldn't be around for long, and to give my son that name, which I preferred. Sure enough, my husband and I are no longer together, and I'm very happy with the name I chose for my son, considering my ex-husband is hardly around anymore and the kids and I have zero contact with his brother. Story 5. I found a text to his friend saying he saw no future with me. We had been together for 4 years, and he had recently convinced me to leave my high-paying job to move to a small town for his career. I had a coworker who talked about his girlfriend saying things like, "She's boring, I don't see a future with her, I'm gonna break up with her," etc., complaining for like 20 minutes. Then just 1 week later, he was, "I got engaged and I'm going to marry her." I asked him about all the crap he said just 1 week ago, and he's like, "Nah, that was nothing." That's disgusting. My ex wanted to move to my country. Meanwhile, she had her first real job when she was still a student in her city, which was not far, but in another country. I told her, no way, and to keep that job, which was a great opportunity for her. Many years later, she climbed to the corporate ladder and she is number 2 in the same company. She had been the only person I wanted to grow old with. No way I will ask anyone to make drastic life changes in order to be with me, and will probably push them back if they want. Story 6. I don't even remember what the argument was about anymore, but when he grabbed me by the throat in the car, that was the moment. There's no going back from that or moving forward. Quietly made my exit plans, called off the engagement, and left. That was the first escalation, and I don't doubt that it would have increased over the years if I had stayed. This happened to me. He grabbed me by the throat and shoved me against the wall simply because I wouldn't let him drive after drinking. Everything flashed before my eyes in that one little moment. Our entire 5 years down the drain, all our friends and family that were notified about our wedding and RSVP'd, all our memories and amazing trips that we've taken and would have taken in the future, plus simply the fact that he would break my heart like that to physically hurt me. Anyway, it was all gone in that small moment that he chose to put his hands on me. He chose to leave and just walk aimlessly around our apartment complex at 1 a.m. in the snow, since I took his keys. And when he got back, I was packing his things. Oh girl, I'm so sorry, but I am glad you got out of that. When I was 22, I got into a horrible toxic relationship with a man much older than me. I stayed for a while because he never put his hands on me, at first. Then one day, out of the blue of arguing, he strangled me in his car and wouldn't let me get out of the car. Instead, he drove me to a very dangerous part of LA, dumped me off, and told me to find my own way home at 4 a.m. I stayed for a couple of months after that. Very stupid and insecure of me. And that's when he started to actually hit me, and he would get into full-blown fistfights with both of us being bloody at the end. Once I had the guts and resources to leave, he stalked me for months. When he finally landed in jail, I felt safe for the first time in years. Story 7. When we got in a fight, he punched a hole in the closet door and then went to the liquor store and took his anger out on the wrong person, who proceeded to hit him over the back of the head with a bottle and give him a skull fracture. He was absolutely insufferable, refused treatment by the ambulance, refused to let me take him to the ER, and refused a second ambulance treatment. He had a splitting headache for days, and finally, he let me take him to the ER after like 6 days, and he found out he had a skull fracture. When he got out, he needed 24/7 observation for 2 weeks, and I had a job and a kid, so I couldn't do that. I called his mom, who came and took him, and when he came back, I had all of his stuff packed up in his van ready for him to move out. I did not play. Story 8. When he lost his job, and 2 years later, I started to put a dot on the calendar whenever he went to the casino while I was at work. The fact that I felt the need to do it was telling enough. But then, when faced with it, flat out denied how often he was going. He was going 3 to 4 times a week, and I found out later he was thousands of dollars in debt. I was out of there. Very similar to mine. Quit his job with my support because they treated him horribly and it was affecting his physical health, but I never looked for a new one. Whenever I brought up the future, he would say, "As soon as I find a job, we can start thinking about that." Not even. We can get engaged. He needed to get a new job before we could even think about getting engaged, and he wouldn't look. If someone gave him a lead, the job wasn't good enough. If someone in his field gave him a lead, he thought they were sent by his former employer so they could get out of paying his unemployment. I would come home from work because, of course, I let him move in, and he would be gone, with a note saying he got tired of sitting around with nothing to do, so he went to play video games with his brother. Took a while for me to get there, but I finally realized we were at a dead end. His go-to when we were arguing was threatening to move out, and one night I didn't beg him to stay again. He didn't even know what to do. He literally said, "You always begged me to stay before," and I always did. Well, not this time. Story 9. When I poured my heart out to her, talking about the things that I was passionate about, and then she looked at me and said, "I'm bored," with a self-amused look on her face, like she thought she was being cute. My brother does this when one of our very young nieces tells a long and rambling story. This 28-year-old man will suddenly interrupt with, "Boring." He thinks it's hilarious. Not gonna lie, it's mildly amusing. Douchey, but amusing. Are these his daughters? My dad would interrupt me saying, "Are you talking to me?" Even if I was like 2 minutes into talking to him about something. It would hurt my feelings so bad, and I would take the hint and leave him alone. I never got to tell my parents anything. How I felt, how my day went, because they would always interrupt me to tell me they weren't interested. We never had a good relationship. Your brother needs to get his crap together if these are his daughters, and if they aren't, he has to figure out how to politely listen to kids ramble if he ever wants any, because that's just a part of it. What a prick. She's going to grow up not liking him. Yes, children's stories are freaking boring or complete nonsense, but imagine knocking the confidence out of a child because you're so much of a cunt that you can't just sit there and listen and just say, "Wow, that's amazing, mate," at the end of their story. Yeah, just dismiss the child that is opening up to you. Screw whatever the consequences are to the child. It's our job to build up children, and it's done continuously in little moments like this throughout childhood. If I saw him do that to a kid, I'd wait until he was talking about his favorite subject ever and just sigh and say it to him just when he's at his peak excitement. See how he likes it. This behavior makes me so sad. I'm a guy and generally really enjoy interacting with kids, especially when they're about whatever they're excited about. I suspect a lot of adults just don't have the time or patience, so I enjoy it and feel duty-bound to show rapt attention and anger with them and ask them to explain. I love doing it to my buddy's twins and sitting down with them while they show me their favorite episode of some insane YouTube thing I don't understand gives my friend a brief peace of mind. At the same time, because I'm a man, I know my interactions with children are viewed with some skepticism and scrutiny, and I'm self-conscious about it. So it's pretty much only safe to interact with children of friends and family. Disheartening to see a parent blow off their kid in favor of doom scrolling at a distance and not really knowing what to do about it. I'm 2 days late, but I wanted to share something that is right on brand to what you're talking about. My ex was an awful person. I actually haven't dated since we broke up. I just don't feel comfortable letting anyone have that much control over how I'm feeling. She did some absolutely terrible things, but one of the most tame, yet most impactful things she did was similar to this. We were at a bar having a drink and I was telling her a story about something I was doing with my friends. There was a part I knew she would find funny, but I needed to give it a little context in order for it to make sense to her, since it's not something she's particularly into. It wasn't very long-winded, maybe a minute or two of explanation. Yet about 30 seconds into talking, she super casually put her finger in the air and spun it in a circle, which I obviously noticed immediately as, get to the point. I just stopped talking. She asked me to continue and I told her I didn't want to. It's a dumb story and not important. She tried to explain that the finger thing was supposed to be like a joking motivation to keep going, which it isn't. I remember that experience so vividly because I cannot remember a time when my feelings, my interests, my input, all of it felt so worthless and unwanted. And all that from someone who meant so much to me. So much tamer than the especially hurtful things she did to me, but in a weird way the sting from that one lasted even longer. Story 10. The night before I was going to propose, she called and said through tears, "I need you to know that if you ask me to marry you, I will have to say no." That was only the start of the realization. Over the next week, she divulged how years earlier she had been abducted and essayed, such that she could not have children, though she wanted kids. Understandably, there was a lot of unprocessed trauma. Whether it was because of that or other things, she admitted that for as much as she valued our friendship, she couldn't bring herself to feel the kind of attraction that warrants a wedding. She had wanted to reveal all of this earlier, but could never discern the right moment or find the courage. Now, with the potential for marriage on the immediate horizon, it all became overwhelming for her. For 3 months, I held out hope that counseling would fix things, or that she'd have a sudden change of heart, like in movies. Sadly, she was just nowhere near ready. One day, while I was cooking soup and talking to her on the phone, she told me that she hoped we could stay friends forever, but that she didn't see us ever marrying. I told her that I couldn't be around her and not stay in love, so it was better to go separate ways. Even as I said it, I realized the soup had been boiling over for some time. I think that was when I accepted it was the end. I hung up the phone and wept for an hour. It was as if an immense mosaic was being shaken to the floor by an earthquake. Innumerable expectations and dreams were splintered and scattered, each fragment reflecting a future now lost. I understood immediately that rebuilding, if it ever came, would take time. But my image of life would never quite resemble the one I had imagined. 15 years later, I am glad to say I am married. My wife and I have 3 children and a great life. I'm pleased to say the former woman got help and eventually married a young widower who lost his wife to cancer. The man had 1 or 2 little kids, so she got to be a mom like she dreamed of. In hindsight, more good has likely come from the breakup than would have from our union. This in turn has helped me to receive adversity and sorrow as potential stepping stones on life's path. Instead of being frozen by despair, experience has convinced me to wait for goodness, yet unseen. Many years have passed, yet I still love the first woman. Not in the same way, or with the naivete of my early 20s, but I harbor an ardent goodwill toward her, wherever she is. And I remain grateful for what we had. Some mornings when I am seated outside, birds alight on the table in front of me. After they have rested for a moment, they fly off and I never see them again. The love one shares with another does not entitle the lover to be beloved, or else love would be a cage. Love is a resting place we afford to others for as long as they need. It is a table we offer to weary wanderers before bidding sincere farewells. You seem like a wise person. Such a sad story, but I'm glad you both found happiness. I was like that woman once. I could not return the love that was given, turned down the proposal and broke up the relationship. I know I caused hurt. I wasn't ready, nowhere near due to the amount of trauma. It took me many years. I hope he's okay and I wish I could apologize, though I'll never disturb him, so as not to cause pain or disturb my own life. I'm happy now. Sometimes we meet people at not quite the right time. Or maybe it was right in a way, but not a forever union. Your story made me think. Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a similar story to these that you would like to share with us, please leave it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and subscribe. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.